Hello, and welcome back to It's a Very Exciting Time, a podcast by a UFO nerd and his tolerant friend. My name is Scott, and I've been fascinated by the phenomenon my whole life.
And I'm Chuck. I'm an aerospace nerd and a tolerant friend.
We started this podcast because since 2017, there have been shocking revelations, from news of secret Pentagon programs to confirmed videos of astonishing craft. In a nutshell, now that we know the government has recovered non-human technology.
Or at least we will, once we catch one of those meddling Jersey drones.
It raises a natural question. If UFOs are real, what else? Suddenly, some of these other parts of the phenomenon that seemed unlikely are pulled into the realm of the possible.
And they may still be unlikely, but even if it's new science and not aliens,
woohoo! It's a very exciting time.
It is. A quick reminder before we dig too far in, if you want to support what we do here, best way is by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/veryexcitingtime.
All right. Chuck, it has been a long 2 weeks, man. We recorded an episode 2 weeks ago about the drones in New Jersey. Yeah. It was no exaggeration, by far the most popular episode we have ever recorded.
Really?
So hello, nice. New viewers.
Hello.
But here's the thing. Last week, what we were talking about was like, hey, there are these drones, and that's weird. And I wonder what they are. Well, they're probably not hobbyist, and I guess they're probably for an adversary, but maybe there's something more unusual. And I think everybody kind of assumed that this story would blow over. Either the sightings would stop and it would just kind of turn into nothing, or the government would come out with an explanation. Hey, this is actually something we've been testing, or even, hey, we confirmed these were Chinese spy drones or something.
Right.
But I'm here to tell you it's been 2 weeks, and in a nutshell, with every day that went by with continued drone sightings that are still ongoing and no answers from the government, people got more and more frustrated. And by the time the government finally figured out some sort of answer they could give, it was so inadequate and condescending that no one trusts it. So we're in a very weird spot right now where, like, hey, I'm back and the drones are still happening. And I've got so much to talk about. It doesn't feel like I should have that much to talk about, because it's like, hey, in a nutshell, the drones are still there and still no one knows what it is. But it's been a wild time, man.
Yeah. I mean, I've been looking at the word count, and like last episode was a long episode, but the word count on this is still 1,000 words longer. So I know you can cut and hard. Like,
we'll try to keep it tight. Chuck has been warning me. There's a possibility we may need to break this episode up into multiple parts, which would be a new experience for us. I'm hoping we won't have to do that, but we'll see.
We'll see.
I want to open with this quote that I saw on Reddit that really made me laugh and kind of summarized what's going on, which is, this guy said, they obviously thought they could sweep the UK and New Jersey UAP reports under the rug by referring to them as drones. But instead, they destigmatized the phenomena. The general public, who might have been hesitant to report UFOs or UAPs, are very happy to post all night long about unidentified drones. And local law enforcement is taking it a lot more seriously than they would have if people were calling in reports of UFOs flying over their houses.
That is so funny. I had not thought about that, but that's totally... Right? Yeah. When we see them talk about UFOs, but we don't know what they are, I kind of shrug. But when they say, don't worry about those mystery drones flying over your house, like, actually, I'm pretty engaged. Like, I am a little worried.
Say more.
You mean that's SUV sized and I don't need to worry? Like that? I could take out my house if it fell. Like,
right? And you're not alone in being interested in this. This story has blown up in the last 2 weeks. It's been getting attention from every major media outlet, including the New York Times, which New York Times has a storied and troubling history with the UFO phenomena, having
Yeah.
broken the whole modern UFO phenomena back in 2017. Right. And since then, very much going back on, there's nothing to see here. So the fact that they covered it at all is kind of a big deal. It hit the front page of CNN.com. Like, it's been wild.
Yeah. Okay. But here's the thing. It's still just New Jersey, right? Or has it spread?
Oh, buddy. Oh, you sweet summer child. No. So yeah, there's the New Jersey drones, which let's just talk about military base incursions for a moment.
Okay.
So starting in November, well, actually starting in earlier November in the UK, but in the US, they started in New Jersey at Picatinny Arsenal back in November 13th. And they've been ongoing ever since. Since then, we had Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany, Marine Camp Pendleton in California, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, and Hill Air Force Base in Utah. So that's just reported military incursions. Now, someone pointed out online, there have been persistent rumors that there have also been incursions over Navy bases in Washington State, which obviously catches my ear. That's right in my neighborhood. Those have not been confirmed, but the discussion around it was really interesting because they were like, are they obligated to report this to the public? And they said no. So how many military bases have had drone incursions that just haven't told the public? Who knows? But at the very least, we've got coast to coast from California to New Jersey, drone sightings across the country. Add to that, civilian sightings have been going wild. New York State followed closely on the heels of New Jersey with sightings in Staten Island, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Queens, over LaGuardia Airport. We've got civilian sightings in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Harwich, Massachusetts. The governor of Maryland reported seeing them off his porch. Fairfield, Connecticut, Houston, Texas, Jacksonville, Florida, Washington State, civilian sightings, and including in addition to the rumors of military sightings.
So, but does it strike you as odd that like all the reports are in English-speaking countries, except Germany, but they speak English?
Funny you mentioned that. First of all, it doesn't. We see this across the board that the English-speaking world has a bias towards, surprise, reports from English-speaking countries because that's the language we speak. But there are definitely reports from other countries. Most notably, we always hear about stuff going down in Brazil. It's just that most people don't speak Portuguese. I shouldn't say most people. Most Americans don't speak Portuguese.
Yes. Most of our news reporters don't.
Yeah, but notably, there have been drone sightings in Iran, per Ross Coulthart, and in Portugal itself, per a CNN report.
I stand corrected.
And then even here in Oregon, there was a big sighting that got a lot of attention where multiple pilots reported a UFO and were given permission to detour their flight paths around it.
Wow.
This one doesn't carry a lot of weight, but I feel obligated to mention it. I got a text from Annie, my wife, the other night, and she's like, hey, do you know, does Portland have traffic drones? And I'm like, I don't know what that is. Do you mean like traffic helicopters? She's like, no. When I was driving down Grand, I saw two different things fly overhead that seemed more like big drones than small planes.
Whoa, that's weird.
No, right? Like, likely that was just a civilian drone sighting, but... yeah, like drones are in the ecosphere right now.
Yeah, I mean, if Annie is seeing sightings, that's, I don't know, that's something. It's cool hearing that it's in Jacksonville. Maybe I'll get to see some too.
Yeah, Florida man spots drone.
I know, right?
I do think it's important, and we're going to get into this later, believe me, but I just want to reiterate up front. If you didn't watch last week's episode, I recommend it, but I can kind of brutally summarize it as there was a similar drone sighting a few years ago in Wisconsin, where there was persistent sightings of drones over time. There was a similar set of drone incursions about a year ago over Langley Air Force.
Right.
Is it an Air Force base? Over Langley. Anyway. And then there's this ongoing sighting. And in the last episode, we really broke it down by who is this likely to be? Because the only thing we're getting from the authorities is no one has any idea who it is.
Right.
No one's even pointing fingers. Like, you would kind of expect someone to be like, yeah, we don't know who it is, but I mean, it's Russia. You know, like, there's none of that. It's like, yeah, we have no idea. So we looked into multiple possibilities, including hobbyist drones, foreign adversaries, and something more unusual. Now, we can't rule out something more unusual. We can't rule out foreign adversaries. In fact, if I had to put money on it, it's probably foreign adversary. But I think we did a pretty good job of putting a nail in the coffin of the theory that these are hobbyist drones. That is something that has been persistently floated, and believe me, you're going to hear a lot of it tonight. But there are a lot of reasons why not. In a nutshell, all the drone defense mechanisms that have been built are extremely effective against consumer grade drones. And we are hearing many reports that these drones fly up and counter drone measures do not work on them. They can't interfere with the radio frequencies. They can't jam their GPS signals. They can't shoot them. They can't target them. And they can't track them back where they came.
Yeah, that's a big one.
There are many reports of people flying hobby drones in areas where they shouldn't and getting caught almost immediately. This is a very well understood field. It's not hobby drones. That said, I got a couple of quotes to kind of hammer that home even more.
Okay.
Philadelphia Police Foundation President Maureen Rush says it is important to note that many sightings include commercial-grade drones, some as large as small airplanes, not the kinds used by hobbyists. She says, quote, my other concern is that there are multiple drone sightings. They're almost in a flock. If they were geese, they'd be in a flock. And that's what's really unnerving for people.
Yeah. So this last week, I've been pondering what the official collective noun for a group of drones should be. Like, you know, murder of crows, parliament of owls, a flap of UFOs. But is there an official name?
I've only ever seen it referred to as like a swarm.
A swarm.
Is there a better one? Is there something funny?
I think it should be a nuisance of drones, which has that same sort of shape as like a busyness of ferrets.
I like that. Okay, a nuisance of drones.
Yep.
We've also got a quote here from Lou Elizondo, the former director of the Pentagon's secret UFO program. He said, some of these drones are sophisticated enough and the size of an SUV that the only people who could pull that off are nation states like China or Russia or the US. You need a huge infrastructure to deploy these things, to recover them, to maintain them, to repower and recharge them. And you've got a communications issue, which is line of sight. These things are loitering for 5 to 10 hours and potentially can traverse tens, if not hundreds of miles. You need a huge infrastructure and architecture to manage that, especially if you've got more than one drone in the sky. Yeah.
I agree with almost all of this except the line of sight. That one seems, I mean, Lou Elizondo knows so much more than me, but it feels like if there's line of sight, we would have found the operator by now.
Well, I think that's his point. Hobbyist drones and common commercial drones typically do require line of sight.
Right.
And if these required line of sight, it would have been a trivial matter to catch them. So somehow these things are not based on line of sight.
Right. So they have to be like entirely autonomous unless maybe they aren't unmanned. What if the drone operator was inside the UAV, like inside the mothership?
But Chuck, they would have to be so small. Are you?
I wasn't even going there, but you're right. What if they were ducks?
I just assumed you were setting me up for another duck joke, but all right.
No,
I'll take the credit for it.
I actually wasn't, but I'm delighted.
So yes, it's always possible it's ducks. I also wanted to bring up one more point, which is we talked a lot in the last episode about one of the arguments against this being foreign nation just spying is why would they bother? Like, why would anyone use drones for surveillance when they have satellites? So
It's a great
someone on
question.
Reddit posted a very good point. They said satellite imagery does not give nearly the resolution that drones and planes give. Even high-end satellites are not even close to the 1 to 2 centimeter per pixel that most drone results will give. They're more like 30 to 50 centimeters per pixel. I'm sure what the military has is better, but from what I've seen, it's maybe 10 centimeters per pixel at best. There's also, with satellite, no ability to look under facades or on oblique angles in general. There's no ability to model anything from satellite imagery due to a general lack of appropriate overlap, whereas drone mappings use a grid and linear pattern with 60 to 80% overlap between the lines, which lets you do telegrammetry. He says, I use drones almost daily, and most people don't even realize the mapping applications they have. You can create a full 3D model of the area once mapped and use that for planning. We do it at work all the time.
Yeah. I do have some quibbles with the analysis, but the main question I have is if you want high quality visual spectrum imagery,
Mm-hmm.
why would you fly exclusively at night? Even even with gigantic lights, I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that wouldn't get you to 3D mapping that this
Yeah.
person is talking about.
No,
So
that's a very good point. It's still weird, but I
yeah,
did think it was worth noting the
yeah, it is.
resolution issue and
It
the
is.
angle issue.
Yeah.
But that said, that brings us to a report about drone incursions that happened last month at RAF Lakenheath over in the
Mm.
UK.
Okay.
The Daily Mail reported that a senior officer who was briefed on the drone incursions said, quote, the drones were flying in with no lights. When they were close to the site, they were turning on the lights, going, here I am, and not one piece of our equipment could bring it down or track it. The drones were flying in formation and immediately locked onto a police helicopter that was sent to investigate. When the helicopter climbed, the drones climbed with it. When the police helicopter tried to leave the area, the drones followed it. There is a
Shit.
classified 30-minute video of the incident. There's approximately 1 minute of footage when you can see a craft that looks like a fixed-wing craft, and the maneuver that it does on screen is like a very fast banking maneuver. Long-range drones that the US military use, there's a couple of seconds lag in the system. A report from the pilot said that it must have been controlled by a controller within the UK, as there was no lag in the response.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. Or entirely autonomous, but
Yeah.
are they so are the UK drones still happening like they are in New Jersey?
They seem to have dried up. I was
Okay.
able to find one reference. The Sunday Times reported that the mystery drone activity in England stopped in the first week of December.
Okay. Okay. Okay, cool. So one thing we kind of asked about last time is why people aren't flying their drones up to the mystery
Mm-hmm.
drones, or like, um,
Yeah.
did anyone try that, or did we get any results on that?
We actually did hear a number of reports about people
Okay.
trying this, which is good because I found it a
Yeah.
little suspicious that no one was trying. Like somebody
Yeah.
out
Right.
there has tried.
Mm-hmm.
Fox News reported that a New Jersey local tried to use his drone to investigate. Quote, the other night there was a drone up here just hanging out. I put my drone up in the air and went towards it. I had full battery life. Not 3 minutes into the flight, I lost control of the drone. Warning on my screen. My drone started going down with a dead battery.
That's interesting. I feel like you've mentioned batteries like suddenly draining before.
Mm-hmm. It's a very common problem reported on Skinwalker Ranch. And the
Oh,
implication there is that the phenomenon Skinwalker Ranch has some effect on technology,
okay.
whether that's some sort of persistent EM field or something. But one of the common side effects is fully charged equipment just like, yep, my battery's dead.
Hmm.
Um, and it's worth noting it wasn't just that one dude. Red Panda Koala reported people in New Jersey are reporting their personal drone batteries dying around the mystery drones. And then he shared a video showing a personal drone approaching a mystery drone and just plummeting out of the sky.
Whoa, that's so weird. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what? I can't even think what would drain a battery like that. Like, that's a
Mm-hmm.
chemical reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Are they like tricking the drone into thinking that it has a dead battery, or?
Yeah, maybe, like a counter signal or something. Um, New Jersey Montvale Mayor Mike Gasali
Mayor.
posted on social media, a highly respected, professional, and trustworthy Montvale resident informed me with 100% certainty that his son's. I'm sorry, I just have to say, dude, I get it. You're a politician and you're talking about something weird and you want to make sure that you sound credible. But the more emphasis you put on how credible this source is, the more I doubt it.
I see, yeah, very, very trustworthy. Anyways, it was his son.
Extremely trustworthy guy.
Actually, it was the buddy of his son. They went to school a couple years ago. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, he said, informed me that his son's hobby drone attempted to follow one of the drones, and it was drone jacked.
Ooh.
He lost total control of the drone, and it disappeared into the air. It seems these are very sophisticated drones with counteroffensive systems.
Okay. Drone jacked. I like this term. So that gets back to the idea from last episode where the mystery drones are themselves employing counter drone tech like GPS spoofing, which could be why that car clock was changing around the drones or some of the other like mysterious stuff happening there.
Yeah, it's a really intriguing possibility, right? Like if I'm going to send a drone into adversarial space and I know that they have counter drone tech, I might just put some of my own on the drone. Why not? You know?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Another reason that we might not be seeing a lot of personal drone footage is because apparently they're arresting people. So
that would do it.
Yeah. TikTok user Beauty Mark says, one of my friends in New Jersey was trying to fly his drone up to 3 separate drones. They were the size of cars hovering above his house. When he got his drone close to those drones, his drone automatically got hit by some kind of pulse. I wouldn't think it would be an EMP, but if it turned the drone off automatically and it fell out of the sky, I don't know what else it could be. The FBI knocked on his door and arrested him. He's actually in jail at this very moment. According to his wife, he's being fined tens of thousands of dollars for flying his drone in what was considered to be a no-fly zone. His wife said they seized his drone. I get fining a person, but why take his drone?
I mean, if he's not, he may not know about the no-fly zone, but if you're not respecting a no-fly zone, maybe you shouldn't be allowed to fly there. But hey, I don't know. Maybe they wanted his footage. Who knows?
Yeah, it's hard to say. What I will say is we have heard that they are setting up restricted airspace in the area specifically for drones. And in the last episode, we talked about how drones, commercial drones, hobby drones at least, are automatically geofenced and they know where the restricted airspace in the area is and they won't even enter it. But if there's kind of a last minute FAA update, maybe your drone doesn't have it. So maybe the guy didn't know that he wasn't supposed to be, but I don't know. You know, like if there was a drone flying over my house, I might just do it too. And the FBI showing up later and arresting me and taking my drone would probably be a rude surprise. How did you even know I was here?
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, for all we know, they're thinking that this guy was the person controlling the 3 drones above.
Right. So. We finally caught him, sir.
Yeah. So you mentioned drones flying out of the sky. And one of the questions I had last time was, what about the mystery drones? Have any of them crashed or landed or like been captured or anything?
That is a great question. Short answer, no. But there were a couple of incidents that I think it's worth talking about. Because we've talked about it before. Like, I don't know what the failure rate is on SUV-sized military drones, but we know with commercial drones and hobby drones, the failure rate is not high, but it's definitively not zero. Like if you have a drone swarm operating, it is incredibly common for at least one of the drones to have some problems and stuff. Yeah. So, and especially in an adversarial environment like this, where military and FBI are actively employing drone countermeasures against you and you're flying in presumably unknown territory because you're mapping it. Yeah, you would expect there to be some downings.
Yeah.
So on the 12th, December 12th, the Morris County police scanner in New Jersey said, per the caller, a drone fell out of the sky by the power lines behind their house, and then 10 more drones showed up.
Oh.
Reddit followed up later. They said, it appears that the downed drone might have been nothing. The county office of emergency management was brought in, and they seem to have reported that nothing happened.
Huh. So hang on. 10 more showed up and nobody's going to talk about that part because that's fascinating. Like, did they just hoist it up with little ropes or like, I don't.
Maybe. I will say there was a very insightful comment on Reddit. Okay. Can I just grouse for a second? I like to properly source my quotes. I like to say who said things.
Yeah.
But it's really hard with Reddit users because their names are all so ridiculous. So, like, here's a very insightful comment from Reddit user Dog Cat Potato.
Yeah.
Anyway,
cool.
Thank you,
Lay it
Dog
on
Cat
me.
Potato. Although I'm making fun of your name, your comment was great. He said, I can explain what might be going on here because I'm working on a multi-agent algorithm that would react exactly like that. If you want to control an autonomous swarm, there needs to be at least one connection between each agent in the swarm, such that from any agent you can reach all of the others. If you want to reduce the amount of connections, to reduce the amount of overhead, they might simply be linearly connected. For example, 1 is connected to 2, is connected to 3, etc. So if you were to break a link in that chain, the swarm cannot function anymore. So what I would do is have the 2 swarms, because remember the connection is broken now, so there's 2 swarms. I would have them group up at the last known location. And from there, either they're able to reestablish contact with that drone, or the agents that were in contact with it try to establish contact between each other, such that the chain is once again connected and they can continue on their way. The 10 drones coming over like that might seem ominous, but it's exactly how I would expect an autonomous swarming algorithm to react to this type of event.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I have some thoughts about
You're
that
still processing
architecture.
that one.
No, like it's not how I would do it, but that doesn't mean it's a bad way. So anyway, we've got one drone down. Okay, actually, I am going to say it. If one went down, the general action should not be for everyone else to rush into the room. Something bad happened there. You got to go somewhere else. Okay, anyways. Yeah. So one drone is down, nothing recovered. Maybe it is exactly as I theorized, that they had little tiny ropes and they picked it up and took it away. Right. Or they recovered their connection or whatever.
Something. Yeah.
Were there others like that?
There was one other report that got quite a bit of coverage. On December 12th, Hillsborough Township Police and other agencies responded to a report of a drone crashing into a field alongside the Lowe's store on Route 206 after the caller said it struck a nearby high-tension power line around 8:30 p.m. But despite an extensive search, they came up empty.
Wow. Okay. They mentioned other agencies. What were they talking about? Like FBI or?
No, this is standard, like police, fire, EMS.
Yeah. Okay. So like a normal 911 call.
Yeah. Also hazmat.
Okay. Why hazmat? Were they worried about like giant battery fires or something, or what?
You're pretty close. Yeah. Basically, there have been small bits of guidance sent out to fire departments and others saying, hey, we don't know if these drones are carrying payloads, so you have to treat them like they might be.
Oh.
Belleville Mayor Michael Melham said, first of all, if there's a downed drone in our vicinity, we are to immediately call the bomb squad of our county. And second, our fire department has been instructed to make sure they wear hazmat suits because they're not sure if there's a payload or not. And that's what we were told during the briefing on Wednesday.
Okay. All right. So actually, this makes a lot more sense. We've talked about the runtime being way too long. Well, one of the ways you could do that is with hydrazine, which is a rocket propellant, and it is the most fucking toxic shit ever.
Yeah.
And so
I think
that actually makes a load of sense.
Drone carrying a missile or a chemical weapon, but yes, absolutely. the drone itself could be the hazardous contaminant. But regardless, they didn't find nothing.
Okay. How long does it take to do that kind of search? Like an hour?
That's a really good question. Because this one was so real reported, I can answer it. They got the
No.
call at 8:30 p.m. They couldn't find anything because it was already dark. So they set up a perimeter around the area until daylight, and then they deployed their own drones, and the hazmat team conducted a foot search. And at noon, they called it off, having never found anything.
Oh, so they did a 15-hour search. Like they are actually taking this really seriously.
Yeah.
How much is the federal government doing on this? Like, does the president know about this? What's going on there?
That's a very good question. And someone thought to ask at one of the White House press briefings. They asked, has the president been briefed on this? And the White House press secretary said, the president is aware. We're closely tracking the activity and coordinating with relevant agencies, including DHS and FBI. I don't have anything beyond that to share.
Okay. I mean, so it makes me wonder what the difference is between being aware and being briefed. But
you are not the only one to pick up on that. She did not say he had been briefed. She said he was aware. Well, if I saw it on the news, I'm aware of it.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Now, don't worry. The president-elect is on it. On Friday the 13th, Donald Trump, who I should note still receives the presidential daily briefing, said on social media, quote, mystery drone sightings all over the country. Can this really be happening without our government's knowledge? I don't think so. Let the public know, and now. Otherwise, shoot them down.
That's
the type of measured response we've come to expect from Donald Trump.
Yeah, seriously. Just a reminder for everyone out there, please do not follow the president-elect's instructions to shoot anything out of the sky.
Yeah. Now, in his defense, I can't believe I'm defending this fucking guy. I believe he was addressing the military when he said they should shoot one down. But yes, absolutely. Do not shoot at mystery lights in the sky. Don't shine lasers at them.
No.
There was a report this week that laser strikes reported by commercial pilots in New York have dramatically increased since the drone sighting started. That is a crime because it interferes with flying. It is very, very dangerous. Never shine a laser light at something in the sky.
Oh, what is wrong with us? Okay, carry on.
Well, don't worry. Trump was still on it a few days later on the 16th. In an interview, someone asked him what he thought about the drones. And he said, the government knows what these are. They know where it came from and where it went. I can't imagine it's the enemy because they'd blast it. Something strange is going on. For some reason, they don't want to tell the people, and they should.
That is shockingly coherent. Usually he rambles a lot more than that.
I'm not going to lie. That is a heavily edited statement to remove all his usual digressions.
Okay. That was like a 20-minute interview.
Not quite that bad, but yeah. He also quipped that, I think I'm not going to go to the Bedford golf course this weekend.
Yeah, checks out.
Now, if we're going to talk about all the things that happened this week, before we get to how the Pentagon handled it and how everybody reacted, there is one thing I feel necessary to address. There has been a persistent theory that perhaps what we are seeing are U.S. drones that are hunting for a nuclear weapon, like perhaps a dirty bomb in the New Jersey area. Very alarming and plausible sounding theory, right? This guy on Twitter, Jersey Futures, put up a lengthy tweet thread about this. He said, quote, I'm one of a few groups of people who know exactly what these drones are in New Jersey. What you are seeing are American-made HPGE nuclear detector drones. They look weird because they're heavy and have giant cryocoolers mounted and giant horn antennas to communicate on millimeter wave frequencies that can't be jammed. They have bright lights on them to keep our air traffic safe, something an enemy wouldn't care about. So what are they doing? They're collecting information on how the public will react and testing their own ability to sweep a port city like New York for dirty bombs. Jersey was chosen because we're the closest port city to New York, and New York would be too dense for reliable millimeter wave comms. Why is the DoD silent? Because in a scenario where we have the threat of a dirty bomb and the public does not yet know, the DoD needs to know how the public would react if these were deployed to sweep a city.
Okay. I mean, I actually, this feels like a very plausible thing to me. Like, yeah, usually you notify people about game days. But if the goal is to find out how people react when they aren't notified, you can't. But you
Yeah.
pay for it. You pay for that shit in an organization. Even in a for-profit, if I have to run one of those game days, I pay for it.
Yeah.
So
I don't blame you for finding the theory plausible.
Yeah.
I really have an issue with the idea that they would do this without telling anyone. The government and the military do not do casual training days where they're taking over airspace without letting people know. We've heard about medevac flights being canceled. We've heard about airports being affected. We've heard military bases reporting incursions. If this was a known thing, you would not see any of that.
Right. Yeah.
So
and they usually
is it a psyop on the American public to see how they react to drone overflights? Sure, maybe, I guess, but I don't buy that no one else knows about it. That's a bridge too far.
So what are the chances it's a real problem?
Well, that's kind of the other thing, right? So this theory got a lot of attention, and very quickly it morphed from what he was saying, which is there's not a dirty bomb. This is like a training run for if there were, to people saying, oh, there must be a real dirty bomb in the wild. So Matthew Pines posted probably one of the most cogent arguments against this, which is in the area they host the annual like Army Navy football game. And he was posting a list of all of the like power brokers from the upcoming administration who are at the game, including Trump, Vance, Elon, the Speaker of the House, like all of these people were there. And he's like, if there was even a chance there's a dirty bomb in the area, you don't see the entire next administration sitting at a football game.
Yeah, fair point.
But let's talk about a more reasonable argument. Reddit user Chess728 says, radiation is not something we can simply detect based on presence or absence alone. You get a stronger signal when you're closer to it. Nuclear weapons, almost by definition, are shielded, meaning they're designed not to give off much or any radiation because you don't want to get a massive dose when you're standing next to it. HPGE detectors are most effective at a range of 15 to 30 centimeters and rapidly lose their ability to detect radiation as the distance increases. The drones may very well be looking for WMDs or dirty bombs, but they are not using HPGE detectors to do so. To present this guy's theory as fact in light of that is misinformation.
Okay. I mean, so I don't want to imply that this person didn't do their research. They may, I don't know. What do I know? But
I'll just give you a little bit of air cover here. This guy was very clear in their post that their research was a few Google searches. So go ahead.
Awesome. Okay. That works. So I did more than just a few Google researches. I did find a journal article, or actually I should say an article. I don't know if it was in a journal, about a group doing cesium-137 searches pretty successfully at 80 to 100 meters. And they even specified that the source was surrounded by 5 centimeters of lead and a steel case. They did have, let's say, a small nuisance of detectors, and the detection took about 60 seconds, but they seemed pretty pleased with the results.
Sure. Yeah, and I will go ahead and say several people pointed out in response to this guy that radiation detection drones are apparently a real thing. Now, I don't know anything about anything, so I don't know. Are radiation detective drones a common thing? Are they effective at scanning a city at the heights that these drones are reported at? Why would they be scanning the entire state? I don't know. But what I will say is the original post that kind of kicked this all off, the guy's confidence in them was based entirely on them being this particular type of detector that his company builds. And this response debunked that. So
got it.
I don't dispute the idea that radiation detecting drones could be a thing, but this particular type of drone and this particular type of detector seems to not be a thing.
Okay. Yeah. And also like that article, I did not find it in a peer reviewed journal because the fuck? I don't. This is not my domain. I don't even know what a reputable journal is. I did find a market summary report, which was fascinating, from the DHS about a whole bunch of radiation detecting options that they had chosen or that they were evaluating. And one of them was some pods that you mount under a helicopter. And like, I don't know how the market evaluation went, but if they're building pods for a helicopter, it does sort of suggest that they got more than 15 centimeters away.
What they didn't say is those helicopters have to fly very close to the ground.
So close.
No, that's all totally fair. And we're definitely getting into territory that me and Chuck don't know much about. But I will say there were two other responses to this whole loose nuke theory that I found very reassuring. First of all, from Ryan Graves, who was one of the Navy pilots from the Roosevelt incident on the East Coast. We've heard him talk a lot about this stuff. He said, quote, "I have spoken with sources inside the government who would be responsible for responding to potential nuclear threats within the U.S. I have high confidence that the drone issue is unrelated to any potential nuclear threat." And Chris Mellon, our longtime friend of the show, whose long-ass job title I did not bother to write down this time, he said, "My own discussions with federal officials track this as well."
Okay. I mean, that's great. That's super reassuring. Hearing Chris Mellon, I mean, Ryan Graves is helpful, but Chris Mellon is big hearts for him.
Yeah.
So. Cool.
So we were talking about the nuclear threat and how that particular theory seems to have been debunked, which is great.
Yeah.
But that just kind of puts us right back where we were before, which is just
what's happening?
Like frustrating. Yeah, exactly. Like, what is happening? What are these things? Why can no one figure out is it that hard to follow a drone?
Yeah, seriously.
So on December 9th, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy gave a press conference and he said, "Look, I don't blame people for being frustrated. Let me say, most importantly, right up front, Homeland Security, FBI, Secret Service, our state police, authorities at all levels of government, we do not see any concern for public safety. That's number one. Number two, having said that, it's really frustrating that we don't have more answers as to where they're coming from and why they're doing what they're doing. We had, last night, 49 sightings."
Jesus, 49 in one night. That is crazy.
Yeah, the scale of this is wild. The debrief on December 11th reported Homeland Security officials reportedly briefed New Jersey legislators, saying sightings have occurred nightly, with as many as 180 sightings in a single night, and most activity reported between dusk and 11 p.m. Many of the drones have been described as large, with some estimates placing them up to 6 feet in diameter and operating in a coordinated manner. Currently, the takeoff and landing sites of the drones remains undetermined, although they are believed to maintain prolonged flight periods of up to 7 hours with an estimated range of 15 miles. Quote, "raising questions about their technology and intent." Yeah, I'll say. Some of the drones were difficult to detect for a variety of reasons, which included operating without lighting and others appearing to avoid detection by radio frequency emissions or infrared cameras.
I thought without lights, I thought they had lights on.
Yeah, that was a little confusing. As I understand from other reports, which are all kind of saying the same thing, they tend to keep the lights on when people are looking, right? They're not hard to spot. Everyone's spotting them. But there's multiple reports of them turning off their lights and moving away when other drones or helicopters or planes or anti-drone measures target them. So take that for what you will.
Kind of puts a question mark on the operating the drones with safety lights because they're nuclear scanners. If they turn them off as soon as anything gets near them.
Yeah, absolutely. On Friday, December 13th, News Nation reporter Rich McHugh said, "Hours earlier, I was invited to join the Ocean County Sheriff Department. They launched their own drones to see if they could intercept the mysterious aircraft New Jersey residents have been reporting in recent weeks. The department says these mystery drones evade detection because they don't give off heat like regular drones,
What?
something they had not experienced until now. One of their officers called 911 after seeing 50 of them come off the ocean.
All right, there we go. No heat signature is fascinating.
Yeah.
Also, did they say coming in off the ocean or from the ocean?
I'm not sure the distinction there, but they
Rising up
oh,
out of
like
the ocean?
not
Okay.
coming out of the water. Yeah, coming
Okay.
from the direction of the ocean. Yes.
Got it. Okay. All right. But I thought they didn't know where they were coming from.
Well, yeah, so it gets interesting here. New Jersey State Senator Douglas Steinhardt said the best information that we have available to us at this point suggests that these drones are coming from offshore. When you try to make contact with them, they become evasive or elusive.
That seems super that seems like a significant development. Is there
Mhm.
a mothership offshore that they're launching from by any chance?
Seems like an obvious thing to check for, right?
Yeah.
More on that in a bit. Put a pin
Okay.
in that thought.
All right.
New Jersey Representative Chris Smith said, I spoke with a commanding officer from the Coast Guard who said one of their boats was followed by between 12 and 30 of these drones. Followed right behind them.
Why are the boats not following them?
Now, this is probably the most interesting report of all. I really, really appreciated this one.
Okay.
I mentioned before News Nation reporter Rich McHugh. His report went on a little bit. He opened with like, hey, I was hanging out with the sheriff's department. They said these are hard to detect. He says, quote, I've got to be honest here. You know, when this story first came out a few weeks ago, as a resident of New Jersey and as a journalist, I didn't give it much credence. I thought it would turn out to be a bunch of pranksters and this would all be over by now. But the experience I've had has changed the way I feel about this story completely. What I saw was more sophisticated than I ever imagined. We've been looking for the past hour, and I think we've seen 40 or 50 of these drones. In fact, there's one over my shoulder, right there. And he points to it like it's on camera.
What?
One after another, these drones appear in the night sky. I'm not even sure I'm right in calling them drones. If you look real close, they look like fixed-wing aircraft, about 8 to 10 feet wide, colorful or white blinking lights. It doesn't look like a plane. It's almost inverted. They almost look U-shaped or V-shaped. They don't make a sound, and they're a couple 100 feet above us.
So wait, he filmed it live on the news?
He sure did. Now, unfortunately, his footage was just like everyone else's. There are lights in the sky, but on the ground reporting from a skeptical journalist who came out here primed to believe this was nothing. And he's like, this is weird. What's really interesting is he mentioned earlier he went out with the sheriff's department. That happened earlier that same night. He was going out with the sheriff's department to try to find them, and they didn't find any. He was prepared to wrap it up. He got a report that said, hey, the drones have been spotted in this area. And he lives in the area, so he knows where that is. So he busted over there and immediately sees one. He calls the camera guy. He's like, you got to get over here right now. And they watched over 50 of them appear over the water.
That's bonkers. I love it.
Yeah, it was absolutely wild. The drones are absolutely still in the area. People are still seeing them. And they are still these weird drones, right? We are not talking hobbyist drones. Yeah. They look like fixed wing aircraft. They're large, 6 to 10 feet in size. They're silent, like very unusual.
Yeah.
Brooklyn Representative Nicole Maliotakis says, quote, the FAA, the FBI, the DHS, and the New York Police Department should let the public know what's going on here. Are these drones? And why are they flying over sensitive facilities and infrastructure?
So this is interesting. That sounds like it's changing. Like maybe she isn't accepting that they're drones. Is that a thing?
It's a valid question, right? Like, we don't know what they are. We don't know where they're coming from, but they're drones. Don't worry about it. Like, something doesn't add up here. Why are you so confident they're drones and they're nothing to worry about if you can't track them? New Jersey State Senator John Bromnick called for a limited state of emergency banning all drone usage until the public receives an explanation regarding these multiple sightings.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Did it happen?
Mhm. Yes, but it was more than a week later, almost 2
Okay.
weeks later.
Okay.
Again, put a pin in that. We'll come back to it.
Yeah.
Um, New Jersey Representative Tom Kean said, "We here in New Jersey are at our wits' end with the complete absence of answers on drone activity over our neighborhoods. The federal government should either explain if these are the government's assets in practice, or if these are truly unknown flights, responsibly remove one from the sky for examination."
Absolutely. I mean, at the moment, I'm looking on Kayak to see what a flight would cost to New Jersey because it just seems fascinating.
um, On December 10th, FBI spokesperson Robert Wheeler Jr. said, "The Bureau is actively investigating. We do not attribute the drones to an individual or group yet. I don't have an answer as to who is responsible for the drone flights." Now, again,
Yeah.
December 10th, that's almost a month after this started on November 13th.
Yeah, it's weird that they've been at this for a month and they have
Mhm.
no new info. It's just
Yeah,
crazy.
that's a statement I would expect on day 2,
Yeah,
not week 4.
right.
Ross Coulthart, journalist, UFO journalist who we really respect,
Yeah.
said, quote, "Incredible that the FBI has been forced to admit to Congress that after weeks of sightings, it has no idea what these supposed drones are or who is deploying them. It underlines that there is no certainty that they are drones and gives just how grave a national security crisis this story is becoming."
Yeah, I mean that kind of amps up my question about like he saying no certainty that they're drones.
Yeah.
That's
And I should note, Ross has been on this from the get go, where
yeah.
everybody else is pretty reasonable to call them drones. The War Zone, in particular, has
Yeah,
been reporting on this and just assuming they're foreign adversaries and
sure.
talking about it as basically a failure of intelligence and military readiness that these foreign assets are overhead. I think
Oh,
most people are coming at it from that direction. Ross has been saying from the get go that his insiders are telling him that these drones are behaving in truly anomalous ways. And that's
oh,
something we
okay.
tried to touch on in the last episode is like, even if you go with the idea that these are foreign adversary drones, we're not talking about like, oh, these are just good drones. Like, I think in our head, we all kind of expect that military tech is kind of a generation ahead of what
Sure.
we have. So if I can see the drones we have in public, I can mentally project forward and guess that a military drone is that much better shielded, that much more proof against things.
Sure.
But what we're seeing up there is not just a generation ahead. It's
Mhm.
truly weird. It's not truly weird in the sense of the 5 observables or breaking the laws of physics, but it's truly weird in the sense of this is not what you would expect from just the next generation of drone tech.
Yeah.
And Ross is definitely steering this in the direction of anomalous, non human. There's an argument to be had there. But at the very least, I want to keep hammering this point. These are not just really good drones. They're astonishingly good drones
Right.
in a
Okay.
way that doesn't really make sense based on our understanding of drone tech.
Okay. So anomalous in terms of like not quite near future technology, but also not anomalous in the 5 observables
Well,
like full
Ross keeps
UFO.
implying that they are anomalous in the sense of the 5 observables.
Okay.
He is the only person I have
Okay.
heard
Okay.
arguing that. Everybody else, if they're saying they're anomalous, they're saying it's anomalous, like I was just saying. But anyway,
Okay.
yeah, as Ross said, it's really weird that the FBI was forced to admit after a month they still have no freaking clue about these
I
things.
mean, this could be why.
Yeah. On December 11th, New Jersey Assemblywoman Dawn Fantasia, which, by the way,
Fantastic name.
freaking phenomenal name. Yeah.
Yeah.
After receiving a briefing with other New Jersey legislators, said, "We know nothing, period. To state that there is no known or credible threat is incredibly misleading.
Mm.
State authorities, including the New Jersey State Police, are shackled with what they are able to do because any interception or takedown of any drone is under the strict jurisdiction of the federal government."
Huh. It's like, it's so weird to hear this. Like, we spend so much on our military, but we've made no progress on this. On the other hand, I feel like a little heartened at the same time, because if this was China, well, A, we wouldn't hear about it, but B, the military would just blow the things out of the sky, regardless of the damage or shrapnel that would happen below.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah, if they were absolutely confident it was just a foreign adversary, we would not be having this discussion.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps most notably in terms of public response, on December 12th, because everybody's frustrated, right? That's the through line I'm trying to communicate here.
Yeah.
The FBI is kind of like, I don't know, we don't know what it is after a month. And increasingly, the people who are public representatives are coming out and going, what do you mean you don't know? That's unacceptable after this much time. And you're really seeing the frustration levels ramping up. Perhaps best reflected by, on December 12th, Senators Kirsten Gillibrand, Chuck Schumer, Cory Booker, and Andy Kim all signed a letter requesting a briefing. They said, quote, "We write out of urgent concern regarding the unmanned aerial system activity that has affected communities across New York and New Jersey in recent days. Due to the ongoing nature of these drone incidents, we request that the DHS, FAA, and FBI brief us as soon as possible."
Wow. That is an all-star cast right there. Like, Gillibrand and Schumer alone are a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah. Now, how do you think the federal government reacted?
I mean, if I'm putting on my gambling pants, I think they probably play it off as nothing happened, but I don't know.
Oh boy, it's like you've been on this show for a while. Do you remember that idea you mentioned earlier?
You know?
Yeah. Do you remember that idea you mentioned earlier that maybe there was a mothership sitting offshore? Hey, these things are coming from the direction of the ocean.
Is it happening?
We should go look.
I do remember being very taken with the idea of a mothership. Yes.
Yeah. On December 11th, Representative Jeff Van Drew said, quote, "From very high sources, very qualified sources, very responsible sources." Again, man, you're putting too much effort
more
on
comments,
telling me. The more emphasis you put on it, the more I doubt it. From these sources, I'm going to tell you the real deal. Iran launched a mothership probably about a month ago that contains these drones. That mothership is off the east coast of the United States of America, and they have launched drones.
Wow. That is an assertion right there. Like, Iran. I mean, they've got a shed load of money to throw around. Their mega projects are generally doing much better than Saudi Arabia's, like the Line and whatnot.
It's a low bar, but sure.
They're super into nuclear stuff, despite us building the most complex computer virus ever seen just to mess up their nuclear facilities. Maybe.
Sure. It's weird, right? We haven't heard a whisper of Iran.
Yeah.
Every time anybody mentions the idea of a nation state, they talk about Russia or China.
Yeah.
Like, Iran wasn't even on my radar.
No.
Now, as you might guess, the Pentagon rushed to put out a statement. On December 11th, Pentagon spokesperson said, quote, "There is not any truth to that. There is no Iranian ship off the coast of the United States, and there's no so-called mothership launching drones towards the United States. Our initial assessment here is that these are not drones or activities coming from a foreign entity or adversary. These are not either. Also, these are not U.S. military drones."
Which makes it, like, God, so many thoughts. Like, weird that they're super duper clear that it's not Iran, but like, if it's not foreign adversary and it's not the U.S., what is it? Like,
yeah. Now, that's the direction you and I are heading. Yeah, it must be aliens, right? Like, we've been down this road before. They're setting us up, but it gets weirder. So after being very clear, it is not Iran. There is no mothership off the coast, which kind of implies they went to look for one.
Right.
The next day, on December 12th, White House National Security Advisor John Kirby delivered a joint statement from the DHS and FBI. He said, quote, "We have no evidence at this time that the reported drone sightings pose a national security or public safety threat or have a foreign nexus. Using very sophisticated electronic detection technologies provided by federal authorities, we have not been able to corroborate any of the reported visual sightings. To the contrary, upon review of available imagery, it appears that many of the reported sightings are actually manned craft that are being operated lawfully. There is no evidence of any foreign-based involvement from coastal vessels, and importantly, there are no reported or confirmed drone sightings in any restricted airspace."
What? Like, what
You
the
and I heard,
hell?
it's not Iran, it's not foreign, it's not us, and we went, it must be non-humans, and they went, no, you misunderstood, it's nothing.
It's not anything. It has not. This is nothing. Oh God! So, manned aircraft operating lawfully in military airspace, right? Like,
Yeah, or at least in airspace that was closed by the FAA because they shut
right,
down the area around Picatinny and the Bedford golf
right,
course.
and no sightings in restricted airspace at all.
Yeah, that
Like,
one's going to
okay,
come back to bite him.
okay,
But
all right, cool.
on the day of, you're in the room where he's giving this briefing to the White House press corps. One of the reporters pushed back hard. And normally I would just include like a little snippet of it, but this exchange is so goddamn good. I want to quote the bulk of it right here. So
Okay,
Fox reporter Jackie Heinrich says, "Does the US government have any of its own imagery or video of these systems?" Hey, very reasonable question. You just
super
told us
reasonable.
you're confident of it. You've looked
Yeah.
at the imagery.
Clearly.
Do you have your own imagery?
Yeah.
Kirby says, "I am not aware that we have any US government produced imagery ourselves, but as I said in my opening statement, we have certainly done federal analysis on the existing imagery."
Wait, what? So, is he saying the feds don't have any footage from the military base incursions? Like, how is that possible? Like,
Well, there weren't any military base
oh,
incursions,
well,
remember?
right, of course. God.
Heinrich keeps pushing him. She says, "With what you're looking at, how can you credibly tell people that there's no public safety threat, there's no national security threat, that there's no reason to believe that a foreign government is involved?" And Kirby, and I really want to emphasize this, responds with the most condescending tone of voice ever. And it is incredibly hard to deny that a young blonde woman asked him a question and he got real freaking condescending with her. Like, anyway, he says, "Because the analysis thus far in an investigation that's ongoing has not revealed any national security or malicious intent or criminal activity." But Jackie, I would remind you, we're at the beginning here, not the end. There's a lot more work to be done, and we're working closely with the state and local authorities to gain more information. If you think I'm exaggerating how condescending he's being right here, go watch the video. It's jaw-dropping.
Yes.
We're still in the middle of an ongoing investigation, and I'm up here explaining to you and to let you know what we know so far, what we believe so far. If any information comes to light that changes that characterization, then my goodness, we'll be the first ones to let you know.
My goodness. This, my God, this sounds like my scrapbooking process. Like, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to gather up all the photos from our travels, especially, like, give me all your photos too. Make sure everyone knows I'm working on the project so they don't, like, beat me to the punch. And then quietly, I'm going to stop working on it and hope that nobody notices.
So Kirby keeps talking. He says, "Right now, there's just no indication that this is some sort of foreign, malign activity, or in fact, even criminal. And I want to go back to something I said at the top." He doubles down. "There has been no evidence of any of this activity in or near restricted spaces." And Heinrich is looking at him like, she goes, "That's not what the senators said in the letter. They said, in fact, they've been observed maneuvering near critical infrastructure, sensitive locations, including reservoirs and military installations, and they cited a concern from law enforcement about public safety threats because a medevac helicopter was prevented from transporting a seriously injured patient for care because of the presence of these drones. Kirby says, I stand by my opening statement.
Oh my god, this fucking guy. Seriously.
It gets better. Heinrich says, can you make that make more sense? She says, because I think people in New York and New Jersey see drones the size of an SUV over their house every night and think that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And Kirby says, certainly I understand why people would be looking at this and being concerned about it.
Okay, well, that's something.
We're concerned about it too, which is why we have the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, my goodness, looking at this. And we're taking it seriously. And we understand that people are concerned. We understand that they've got questions. We've got questions too. And we're working hard to get the answers to that. Have you seen that Tim Robbins sketch where he's dressed up as the hot dog guy after the hot dog car crashes in the store? Like, we're all looking for the guy who did this. We've got questions too, and we're working hard to get the answers to that. And what I can tell you, as we sit here today, is we haven't seen any indication thus far that there's a public safety risk. And Heinrich goes, but does anyone in the government know what they are? And Kirby says, we are still investigating this. And Heinrich goes, so no.
So good. This is like shocking for a Fox reporter. I'm
she
glad
was holding
she's
his
sticking
feet
it
to
to
the
Kirby.
fire, buddy.
Yeah, man.
So good.
That's
Kirby
awesome.
says, look, I cannot characterize for you definitively what these sightings are. I can just go back to what I said at the opening. We've looked at the imagery. We can't corroborate some of the reported sightings through our own expert analysis using sophisticated detection techniques. But that doesn't mean that, we're putting our pen down here this afternoon and calling it a day. We're going to keep at this. And Heinrich goes, what are you doing, though? And he says, we are continuing to investigate it, as I said in my opening statement.
Oh my God. Brutal. Brutal, but necessary. Like,
yeah.
So, yeah, it's like they seem to have this view that, hey, nothing bad has happened yet, so there must be no threat.
Right. But, oh my God. It's just, it's so jaw-dropping to walk out after a month of ongoing credible sightings and say, there's literally nothing. Those drone incursions over the military bases you heard about? They didn't happen.
Not happen.
We looked at the photos the public sent us. They were nothing. Don't worry about it.
It's insane.
Just jaw-dropping.
Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about the, no drone sightings in restricted airspace. Because, didn't this all start because of that?
It absolutely did. On December 10th, Picatinny Arsenal put out a news release confirming 11 sightings over the facility since November 13th. They said, quote, while the source and cause of these aircraft operating in our area remain unknown, we can confirm they are not the result of any Picatinny Arsenal related activities.
Okay. So there were 11 sightings. What is Kirby possibly talking about?
Right. Ross Coulthart jumped on that as well. He said, this statement from White House National Security spokesman Kirby is in direct contradiction to a statement issued by the New Jersey Picatinny Arsenal base commander. Why would a White House spokesman recklessly issue such a misleading and false claim?
Good freaking question.
Right. And it gets better because practically as soon as he stopped talking, more sightings over restricted airspace started coming in, almost like the phenomena was listening to him and calling his bluff. On December 13th, New Jersey Navy Weapons Station Earl Public Affairs Officer Bill Addison said, quote, while no direct threats to the installation have been identified, we can confirm multiple instances of unidentified drones entering the airspace above Naval Weapons Station Earl.
I wonder if it's that you were saying the phenomenon was drawn to them. I wonder if they were like, "Hey, we heard the reporting. No, in fact, there have been sightings. I just
It's
didn't do it
hard to
publicly."
ignore. It's hard to ignore that the Navy base Earl guy seemed to have deliberately phrased his press release in contradiction to what Kirby said. He didn't just say there have been sightings. He's like, I can confirm there have been sightings above our restricted airspace.
Yes. Yeah. Amazing. I love it.
On December 13th, the War Zone reported that the airspace above Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio was closed overnight due to heavy UAS activity.
Wow. That is like closing the airspace over an Air Force base. Like, this is just not something you do.
Yeah, it's not something you like casually shut it down for an hour or two.
You know, what bad could happen?
Right. On December 14th, New York Governor Kathy Hochul said last night the runways at Stewart Airfield were shut down for approximately 1 hour due to drone activity in the airspace. This has gone too far.
What is Stewart? Is that like a little rural airport or?
Stewart International is a joint civilian and military airport 60 miles north of New York City.
Oh, okay. So I haven't heard of it because I am not joint military.
And then on December 21st, the War Zone reported the number of drone flyovers of nuclear plants for the entire year nearly doubled in 1 week from December 10th to December 17th. Between January 1st and December 10th, nuclear facility licensees reported a total of 15 drone events, so over the whole year.
Yeah.
As of December 17th, 1 week later, that number had jumped to 26.
That is mildly concerning.
As you can imagine, there was immediate pushback in New Jersey to this statement from the White House. New Jersey Assemblyman Brian Bergen said, quote, I don't believe anything that the spokesperson for the Pentagon said. I think he's an idiot, honestly, because down here on the ground, I've seen these things with my own two eyes. He can do all the analysis he wants, but I think he's a fool.
Jersey telling it how it is. But also, the spokespeople are going to spokespeople.
Yeah, all right. Mine Hill Mayor Sam Morris said, so that means he thinks we're all seeing small planes? Yeah. I have to tell you, that's incredulous. I'm incredulous about that. That's ridiculous. I would invite Mr. Kirby to come on out behind my town hall and you can count them with me all night.
That actually sounds like a great party.
Right? And then Sheriff Sean Golden said, I'll certainly invite the National Security Advisor to come to New Jersey, visit us, and listen to his own personnel at Naval Weapons Stations Earl and speak to them. Because these are trained professionals calling it what it is, right? When you have Navy Weapons Station Earl at the same time Kirby is at the podium, filing a report for drone activity on the base, there's something afoul here.
Yeah, no shit. Jersey does not like it when you say they're imagining things.
So yeah, immediate pushback from people in New Jersey to the John Kirby's statement that nothing was happening apparently, and that everything people were seeing were in fact legal manned flights.
Yeah, obviously.
But it wasn't just people in New Jersey. Congress started reacting as well. Okay. Senator Andy Kim on Friday the 13th posted a thread about driving around with the local police where he said that he personally saw dozens of drones in a 2-hour period. He said, quote, this has gone on for weeks. It is hard to understand how with the technology that we have, we aren't able to track these devices to determine origin. And it makes me much more concerned about our capabilities more broadly when it comes to drone detection and countermeasures.
Yeah, for sure. Concern is the appropriate response to a month of collective shrugs from the FBI, followed by that weird statement from Kirby.
Right.
Just bizarre.
On December 15th, Representative Robert Garcia said, while I appreciate that our federal agencies are making it clear that these drones and or UAPs are not a national security threat, that is not enough transparency. People have questions, fears, and we must demand more answers. The public and Congress must be given more information.
Serious growth mindset. That is not enough transparency. And it is not a national security threat yet. Come on. Growth
Yeah, that's
mindset,
right.
folks.
It could be. Let's hold
Could
out.
be.
Also on the 15th, Representative Raja Krishnamurthy said, quote, the administration needs to be more forthcoming with information they have. If they believe that some of these lights in the sky are civilian aircraft, then show us.
Sure.
Secondly, I'm getting a classified briefing along with my fellow members of Congress as to the nature of these drones.
Yeah. Why do they need a classified briefing to tell them it's a misidentification of hobbyist drones and stars?
It's a very good question. I saw so many people ask that question. And yeah, like, I have yet to see anyone answer why they needed a classified briefing to tell them it was nothing. But all right, sure, whatever.
Crazy.
On December 17th, Senator Josh Hawley says, when we're shutting down Air Force bases, when Wright-Patterson Air Force Base gets shut down for a while, when commercial airlines are interfered with and they can't do their flight patterns because of these drones, that's weird. You can't tell me the government doesn't know what's going on here. And the fact they will not brief us, they will not level with us, they won't answer questions in public, there's something really strange going on.
Yeah. I love it when politicians like drop their guard and say things like, that's weird.
Right? That's
like
not
politicians
people speak at all, but it's so human. Like, this is weird, you guys. You see this, right?
I feel seen.
But don't worry. Congress was ready to take some action. On December 18th, The Independent reported Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer proposed quickly advancing a bill that would allow local law enforcement agencies to track aerial drones, ensuring that Congress won't act this year on the mysterious drone sightings that have bewildered residents of New Jersey. Oh, that sentence got messed up.
Yeah,
anyway, he was trying to make sure that Congress would act this year on the mysterious drone sightings that have bewildered residents of New Jersey across the eastern U.S.
Yeah. I mean, good old Chuck taking action. Chuck's got to stick together.
That's right.
So let me guess, as a longtime co-host of this show, I'm sure it passed quickly because everyone agrees this is a troubling situation.
According to The Hill, Senator Rand Paul blocked it immediately, saying the federal government already has the authority to investigate and stop drones from flying in restricted airspace.
Totally tracks. Yep.
And on December 17th, Senator Richard Blumenthal, following a classified briefing on the mystery drones by the FBI, CIA, and DHS, said, quote, we have received only minimal information, which leads me to believe that our federal government has no idea, no clue, no reliable information about these drones.
Accurate, but ouch.
Right? At this point, we start seeing reports that despite their outwardly calm, don't worry about it demeanor, inside they're freaking out.
Okay.
The Good Trouble Show, hosted by Matt Ford, said, quote, sources have informed us that the Biden administration is in complete meltdown within the White House as they try to mitigate the New Jersey drone crisis. The Biden administration, particular National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and the National Security Council, are lying to the Americans about what they know.
Yeah, complete meltdown is not generally the phrase I want to hear about the White House on any day.
Yeah, true story. On December 13th, Chris Mellon said, I have been in touch with several administration officials today and law enforcement officials who are involved in this case, and I hear all of them say, we have no idea where these things are coming from or what they are.
Fabulous.
Yeah. On December 14th, Ross Coulthart said, I can tell you that inside the FBI, there is a near panic about what is going on because they have no answers at all. The insiders are telling me that, frankly, they're scrambling for answers, genuinely mystified as to what these objects are, and they are as bewildered by the White House's attempts to placate public interest in this issue as we are.
Yeah. I mean, that's terrifying.
Yeah. And then on December 17th, Exo Academian tweeted, the incoherence of narratives being spun by federal officials is making it clear that far from this being a carefully planned psyop, which would push one self-consistent narrative, Authorities are genuinely overwhelmed, discombobulated, and at this point merely attempting to buy time.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't feel organized. Yeah.
Right. I think that is perhaps the best argument I have seen against the idea that this is a psyop against the American people. There's a common conspiracy theory that the government is going to stage a fake alien invasion for reasons related to one world government. I don't know. I never really understood the point behind that plan, but the idea was there was going to be this big false flag attack. But if they were going to do that, you would expect them to be more coherent.
Yeah.
And that is not the vibe we're getting here at all.
Yeah, totally.
But don't worry. In the midst of everybody going, hey, what you're saying doesn't make any sense, the government carefully considered their position and decided to double down.
Of course.
On December 13th, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said, quote, "We have not seen anything unusual. We know of no threat. We have gone to Congress repeatedly asking for more authority to counter drone activity. What? It's not as though just anyone can take down a drone in the sky.
Except you.
That in and of itself would be dangerous. Our authorities are very limited. And that is precisely why we've gone to Congress to expand those authorities. We can't just shoot a drone out of the sky."
If anyone can do it, it's you.
It's so jaw-dropping to watch the strongest military and police state in the world be like, you guys, I mean, our hands are tied.
You can't just, that's a local police thing.
This was on CNN, and Wolf Blitzer was interviewing him, and he basically just doesn't even touch that. He just moves on with the next question. He says, look, do you know for sure that these are drones or unmanned aircraft? What are they? And Mayorkas responds, "We believe there are cases of mistaken identity where drones are actually small aircraft and people are misidentifying them. Now, there may very well be drones in the sky, of course, but those are commercially available. One can go into a convenience store and buy a small drone. There are also commercial drones as well, but we know of no threat or nefarious activity."
Yes. Mayorkas, please see our most recent episode for a very thorough discussion why this isn't hobbyist or small commercial drones.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're really hammering on this point. Like, they seem to have recognized that last time when they said it was all manned airplanes, that everyone thought that was insane. So now they're like, okay, there are drones up there, but they're little drones. Like, don't worry about it.
It's easy.
On December 16th, White House National Security spokesman John Kirby repeated his mass hysteria implications. He said, quote, "Some of it is manned, some of it is unmanned. We absolutely acknowledge that a lot of these are probably drones, but they're flying legally. And it's legal to fly drones in non-restricted airspace," which this is not, as long as you're registered with the FAA. And there's thousands and thousands of these kinds of flights every single day. We assess that the sightings to date include a combination of lawful commercial drones, hobbyist drones, and law enforcement drones, as well as manned fixed-wing aircraft, helicopters, and even stars that were mistakenly reported as drones.
I know that there are a lot of idiotic sightings, but can we focus on the interesting ones for a little bit? Or alternatively, just say swamp gas and save us all time if you're not going to seriously engage.
We've already got a perfectly established shorthand for "I don't take your report credibly."
Yeah.
Just use that one. You don't have to come up with a new one.
It's so much easier.
I love the idea, do you have any idea how many drones are up there every day, you guys? We can't check every single one of them. On December 17th, Air Force Major General Pat Ryder said, "Just to put this into context, there are over 1 million drones registered in the United States, and on any given day, approximately 8,500 drones are in flight. The vast majority of these drones are probably going to be recreational or hobbyist. Sure. They're going to be commercial drones used in things like architecture, engineering, farming, or they could be used for law enforcement. Is it possible that some of these drones could be up to malign activity? It's entirely possible. But the vast majority, that's not the case. In the case of drones flying near or over U.S. military installations, which, by the way, marks a pretty big detour from John Kirby, there have been no drones.
Yeah, right.
That in and of itself, just given the volume of drone flights we see on a given day, is not something that's new.
Oh,
We
sure.
take all of those seriously. And typically, when we detect them, we attempt to classify them and take appropriate measures. Is it possible some of those are surveilling? Absolutely.
Feel like I want to go talk to them and be like, hey, the don't worry, we haven't been able to control our airspace for a long time is not actually a reassuring answer.
It's so good, right? Like, yeah, there are drones up there. There have always been drones up there. What do you want us to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the number of drone sightings over nuclear bases has exploded in the last couple weeks. Like,
It gets even better. Ryder tries to wrap this up with like a pithy little thing. He says,
okay.
I would probably have to think back to the words of a very wise prophet, Obi-Wan Kenobi, who said, "These are not the drones you're looking for."
Like the whole point of that scene was that those were the droids they were looking for. Like this writer saying that he's Obi-Wan trying to force trick us into
It's so good, like not understanding the context of the quote and completely underwriting everything he said. Oh my God. Now, here's what I will say. There absolutely is a mix of legit and misidentification going on now. On December 19th, the debrief put it really well. They said, quote, any serious analysis of the recent drone situation should recognize the factors involving how some legitimate sightings of drones, in this case, eventually lead to media coverage, which inevitably leads to more sightings, often of things in the sky that end up being mistaken for drones. More sightings, in turn, lead to more media coverage, and the cycle repeats.
What was the word for that? It was the frequency illusion, I think was the
it's like when you buy a new car and suddenly you see that car everywhere you go.
Everywhere.
Your brain is tuned to look for patterns.
Yeah, totally. So more people looking up who don't normally look up means they're seeing things they don't normally know how to identify, like airplanes, Starlink. But it doesn't explain the sightings by trained observers who often look up. So we should see a higher percentage of mundane reports.
Absolutely. And I did see a number of people, to the UFO community's credit, saying, you guys, I believe in UFOs 100%. I am embarrassed to tell you how many times I have taken videos of an orb in the sky only for, at the last minute, the orb to turn and reveal itself to be an airplane that was cruising in towards the airport. And I just 100%. Didn't recognize it because when a plane is coming straight at you and shining a bright light at you, you have no gauge for distance, and it seems to just hang in the sky or even just drift a little bit to one side. So yes, absolutely. I agree with you. I would expect a lot of these reports to be mundane. The people I get upset at are the people who are like, it's all airplanes. It's all hobby drones. It's all mundane. Like, no, there were some inciting incidents here. And yes, absolutely. The signal to noise ratio has shifted with the higher percentage of people looking. And this is why we were joking last episode about the FBI opening up a public tip line where they encourage people to send in photos. Unfortunately, in hindsight, I now believe that maybe they were doing that to give themselves cover because it's easier to debunk bad public reports than it is to debunk military ones. But whatever. Yes, absolutely. Lou Elizondo added to this with, I think, a really insightful thing. He said, I believe you could have a mix of UAP incidents with real drone incidences as a response to the drone incidents. What do I mean? Well, in the old days, if there was some sort of UFO or UAP incident near some sort of critical installation, we would have to wake up a pilot, he'd get in a helicopter, start up the helicopter and fly. And you can only cover so much airspace with a single aircraft. But now we have drones. So what we can do is have prearranged coordinated areas like sectors or zones and have the entire thing geofenced. So if something breaks that perimeter, these things are automatically deployed. They go to whatever area they're supposed to go to, and they just start doing racetrack reconnaissance. And some people are reporting SUV-sized and larger craft where the lights are not consistent with any type of navigation lights we have or anti-collision lights that we have for aircraft. They're luminous. They're potentially displaying some of the observables that we have at the Pentagon regarding UAP. And what you're seeing in response is two groups of people. One group of people are reporting UAP incidents, while the other groups are reporting the drone response by the US government to look into these incidents. They're hearing the sound of roaring propellers. They're seeing navigational lights. That is a government quadcopter going up to try to find these things.
That is a really interesting perspective. I definitely find that very plausible. And
yeah, it helps me a lot because I was really confused by how many of the sightings were reported as perfectly mundane, predictable quadcopters making a lot of noise, blinking, moving in understandable ways, and the other ones that weren't. You know, a lot of the sightings were described as silent, and a lot of the sightings were described as quadcopters. Lou's explanation is the first time I've seen something that kind of helps explain why we would see both reports kind of muddled together.
Yeah, and it makes Arrow's interest in not doing anything with UAS way more interesting.
Yeah, the data is muddy for sure. The most cynical response I saw to this, which unfortunately I also find very plausible, came from Chris Sharp of Liberation Times, who said, "Note, the White House and DoD want to keep our focus on civilian sightings because they're easy to debunk. They do not want to talk about failures of counter-drone measures over military bases."
100% makes sense.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting, and I mentioned this earlier, I said put a pin in the idea of flight restrictions from the FAA. After all of this hubbub from the White House saying there's nothing up there, it's all just hobbyist drones, they finally put heavy-duty flight restrictions in place, presumably to stop this flood of convenience store drones that are plaguing the airs over our military airspace. On December 19th, ABC reported there is a major development in the ongoing drone saga in New Jersey. Several federal agencies had tried to put it to bed earlier this week by saying they found nothing out of the ordinary. However, the FAA has now issued temporary flying restrictions in multiple cities across New Jersey due to special security reasons. The previously issued flight restrictions for Bedminster and Picatinny Arsenal remain in place. These areas have all now been deemed national defense airspace. Unmanned aircraft are no longer allowed in those areas from now through January 17th, unless approved by the federal government.
So, cool. I'm super glad to hear that. For our audience and for my own curiosity, what happens if you do fly a drone in national defense airspace?
It's a good question. Nothing good.
I imagine.
The FAA says pilots who violate the airspace may be, quote, intercepted, detained, and interviewed by law enforcement.
Sure.
The FAA can also take administrative action, including imposing civil penalties, and suspend or revoke the airman's certificate, as well as pursue criminal charges. The agency ominously warns that the U.S. government may use deadly force against any drones if they pose an imminent security threat.
What? Deadly force on the drone, right? Right?
Your guess is as good as mine, buddy. I was not expecting to read the words deadly force in the FAA flight restriction, but there it is.
Yeah.
So
wow.
Again, it's a confusing response, right? Mm-hmm. If it's all just hobbyist drones, we don't need this dramatic a response.
Right.
I don't get it, man.
Yeah.
And we're not the only ones who don't get it. It seems very clear that at this point, the response from the federal government has been so inadequate and condescending that nobody believes it. So
Yeah.
whether it's true or not, people are having trouble accepting it.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Have you read any stories? You know how Portland, Oregon loves farming out their difficult jobs to animals. Has anyone tried getting the drone hunting hawks out?
That would be a very Portland thing, right? Like
Right.
the drones came to Portland and we were the ones that cracked it. For anybody who's not from Portland, Chuck is referring to, there are two very well-known wildlife solutions here. One is there is a herd of goats in the Portland that lived in this one like park block for years that are rented out as like landscape cleaners. Everybody loves them, the Portland goats. Yeah. The other one is when we worked in downtown Portland, there was a crow epidemic. And in downtown Portland, all these crows would fly in at sunset and roost in these trees around the parks in downtown, which meant the sidewalks were just absolutely covered in bird poop. So it was gross. Astonishing how much of it.
Yeah.
So the city had some like cleaning crews, but they also employed a perhaps less orthodox solution, which is they hired a number of hawk people to bring hawks into downtown and just fly the hawks around to chase the crows away. It worked stupidly well. The bird problem disappeared overnight. They hire these people for a few months every year when the crows keep trying to nest in downtown.
It's so good.
It's amazing. So yeah, I'm sure there are anti-drone hawks, and I would love to see them attempt to take down an SUV-sized drone.
Yes. I was thinking more some of the smaller ones, but yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So yeah, getting back to the idea that nobody's really accepting the government response. New Jersey Mayor Michael Melham said, "You can't have it both ways. You can say we have no idea. You can say we have no idea what you're seeing, but there's no known threat. You just can't have." That doesn't make any sense. I must have quoted it. You can't say we have no idea what you're seeing, but there's no known threat. Yeah. You just can't have it both ways. We were told by our state police that they know these things are hovering over our critical infrastructure. We had 60 drones hovering over a reservoir this past Sunday. You cannot keep telling us that we're imagining stuff. Our own state police are telling us in a briefing that these things are not emitting radio frequency. Our pilots witnessed the lights turn off and the objects disappear. Our residents are concerned, and the lack of transparency is doing nothing but fueling conspiracy theories.
Yeah, it's an interesting point about the conspiracy theories.
Right. And I mentioned before that, there's this conspiracy theory that this is a false flag attack. But even given that long-standing one, I have noticed a severe uptick in the UFO community lately, with people just assuming that this is an inside job of some sort. Interestingly, a lot of people really want to believe that this is Elon, just kind of randomly. I don't know what they think he's going to get out of this. Or the most plausible one that I saw was that maybe this was a tech bro who had developed a drone tech and was using this as a publicity stunt to get a Pentagon contract. But again, right, like in the absence of information, people are going to kind of make up a story to fit the facts that they see.
Yeah, the billionaire rogue is a very tempting thing, but like we go into this in our last episode a bit. And I don't buy it for a lot of different reasons we talked about. The false flag by Trump, like, I don't know. Would he even remember that he was doing it? Who knows?
I mean, again, for me, every time this idea of a false flag attack comes up, what is the goal?
Right.
Like the usual thing that I hear people say is it's to trigger a war with Russia or China. Buddy, I don't know if you've looked out the window. We don't need an excuse. We're a hair's trigger away. And similarly, like the other excuse I hear people say is, oh, it's so the military can get more funding. Like, do they? I don't think that's something they're struggling for, although then again, like what was Kirby and everyone else saying? Like, hey, we just don't have the authorities. You just need to give us more authority. So maybe there it is.
It's the beginning, isn't it? Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Journalist Michael Schellenberger, who we've talked about quite a bit lately because of his story breaking the Immaculate Constellation program.
That's where it was from. Okay.
Yeah. He sent a letter to the DoD, the FBI, the White House, the DHS, and the FAA, pointing out, quote, significant discrepancies and changing narrative. He specifically called out Kirby, saying there were no drone sightings in restricted aerospace, saying, quote, did Kirby not know of drone incursions over military sites last Thursday? If not, how is that possible given the widespread reporting? If he did, then why did he make the false claim?
Yeah. I appreciate him phrasing it like that. It's like either Kirby is uninformed or he's lying. And both of those are not great for a national security spokesperson. I kind of like to imagine that he's writing this letter like, hey, one journalist to another.
Did you guys go check on your boy?
Yeah, exactly. Something's going on over here. Like,
there's a famous letter. I forget the context, but somebody wrote a letter to someone complaining about something, and they just wrote back and said, dear sir, I thought I should let you know that some asshole has been signing your name on his letters. I don't know if you guys knew this, but there's some asshole giving press briefings saying that nothing's happening. Maybe you should check. Schellenberger continued and asked another question that I found even more eye-raising, because we've already talked a bit about the contradiction of no drones over restricted airspace.
Yeah.
Schellenberger said, Kirby claimed yesterday, we've done the detection and analysis. We've corroborated the sightings. We have now examined some 5,000 different sightings. On Friday, Kirby said, we're taking that imagery seriously, and we're doing the best we can to analyze it. We want to do the best we can to triangulate it. We're going to do everything we can to find out. Does this mean that the investigation was done over the weekend? Don't such investigations normally take months?
Oh, shit. Busted. Like, maybe you should replace Arrow if you're so efficient. It usually takes them.
God.
Like,
yeah, Lou Elizondo chimed in the next day. He said, listen, the bottom line is that the federal government is not being honest when they chalk all these drones up as legally operated craft and law enforcement. If that's the case, they would not be shutting down military installations over drone incursions. It simply doesn't make sense.
Super hard to argue with that conclusion. It does raise the question, why would the government lie about this? Is the truth that damaging, or like what? Yeah, what's the angle?
Yeah, we touched on this in the last episode too, and it was a question I'm really intrigued by. Right, like is it more damaging to say there are unstoppable, untraceable drones in our sky, and we know they're Russian? Or there are unstoppable, untraceable drones in the sky, and we have no idea whose they are. Like, neither one is good, but like, what's the calculus on deciding which one is worse?
Yeah, I'm sure there is a calculus there.
Right. Once again, turning to a Reddit user who summarized it very well, Chess728 said, if the government says they are a threat, people panic, and that's bad. If the government says they aren't a threat, and they're correct, they look like they're in the know and in control. If the government says they aren't a threat and they're wrong, well, the world suddenly has bigger things to worry about than blaming the US government.
Yeah. This logic has the mouthfeel of correctness. But generally, I have a rule that any system with less than 5 axes is either a scam or has been simplified to the point of nonsense. And I think this fits in perfectly. There are absolutely ways we could be, there are other angles on that.
Okay, fair.
So
it is a reductive argument, I will admit, but I find
it's a good one. It's a good mouthfeel.
Right. We have been talking for so freaking long. Let's wrap this up here with one last quote from Big Daddy Lou Elizondo. When someone asked him basically point blank, why wouldn't the government just tell the truth about this? And he says, listen, governments are solution oriented. When you have a problem for which there is no apparent solution or immediate solution, there's a tendency to pass the buck or minimize the issue until you have a solution. I think we're seeing an administration that is desperate for answers. It's in
Mhm.
its very last few weeks, and I suspect they're passing the buck to the new administration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you may not be comfortable with that, but I would 100% be doing that. And I'd also be setting fire to bags full of dog poo as well.
Yeah. I don't like the idea of pawning the problem off on the next government, but I have to admit there's a certain appeal to looking at this drone problem, looking at the calendar going, that looks like a problem for the next guy.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a weird 2 weeks, man. I really,
Yes.
really expected. Okay. What I actually expected, full disclosure to the viewers, if you've made it this far, this was supposed to be our easy episode. The goal was I was going to prep the script for this like a month in advance. We were going to do kind of a UFOs 101 episode that we could record early and take some time off from the podcast. But instead, this weird ass drone story just kept going. It just did not stop. And every day I'm like, surely today is the day that either the drones will just quietly fizzle out or the government will be like, okay, full disclosure, it was X or something like, and they just kept not doing it. It just kept getting worse with every day. And then I sat down to prep for this episode and I had over 200 links bookmarked to go through of like things people had said. It's been buck wild. So fingers crossed in 2 weeks when we record our next episode, I don't even know. Like what could happen? We're still going to be talking about this because either it'll still be going on or it will have resolved. And either way, we need to mention it.
Yeah. I mean, so in 2 weeks, we won't quite have a new administration in, but there's still going to be total chaos. So there's no way it may go away, but it's not going to be resolved.
Yeah. Well, remember the drones in the UK didn't fly over Thanksgiving, so maybe the ducks also take off Christmas.
I mean, yeah, but duck is a common delicacy on Christmas. So I feel like if they're offended by
motivated to keep us distracted. All right. Thank you all for joining us on a very long episode of It's a Very Exciting Time. You can find show notes and more on our website, veryexcitingtime.com, as well as links to our Discord and social media accounts.
You can feel free to email us at Scott or Chuck at veryexcitingtime.com. And if you'd like to support the show, please check out our Patreon at patreon.com/veryexcitingtime.
And as always, Chuck, my wife thanks you for listening to me talk about UFOs so she doesn't have to.